What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today, we're joined by John Karalis from Locked On Celtics to discuss the Celtics' 6-game winning streak and some MVP caliber play from Jayson Tatum. Plus, the Celtics, despite being the number one rated offense in the NBA, just a bottom third defense, still managing to get things done. Why so much of the defensive slippage? Is it all just because of Robert Williams' absence? We're going to talk about that after a quick message from our friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis this season. Get the latest odds and trends for every single professional and amateur league out there. From football to basketball, soccer, even esports, they've got you covered for everything over at BetOnline.net. Right now, you can take a look at who the odds-on favorites are to win the NBA title this season. You got the Boston Celtics at plus 550 leading the way, but the Milwaukee Bucks right there at plus 550 as well. Golden State Warriors in third place at plus 700. And then rounding out the top five, you have the LA Clippers at plus 800 and the Phoenix Suns at plus 1,000. So for all of those odds and more, be sure to visit betonline.net to learn more about the trends and action available to you. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. Joining us now is John Karalis, host of Locked On Celtics. You can follow on Twitter before it burns into flames at John_Karalis. Now, John, the Celtics, winners of 6 games in a row, including a couple against Memphis Grizzlies, Denver Nuggets, some strong, upper tier opponents. Most recently, coming off a win against the Detroit Pistons with a 43-point performance from Jayson Tatum, a season high for Tatum. He's averaging now 32, 7, and 4 on the season, kind of flirting with the 50, 40, 90 club. He's maybe a few percentage points away from officially joining the 50, 40, 90 club. Just how good has Tatum been for the Celtics to start this season?
Yeah, I mean, this is MVP level stuff, right? This is the type of performance that you're hoping to get from your number one guy. And the most impressive part of what Tatum is doing, it's that the big scoring numbers aren't coming because of hot three-point shooting. You can look at his performance and say it's the style of play that's fueling this. Attacking the basket, his finishing at the rim is significantly higher than it's been over the course of his career. And he's averaging at this point 9 free throws a game, but over the past few games, he's been getting 10, 11, he got 20, he got I think 16 in one of them. So he's being aggressive. He's getting to the rim, he's getting to the line. The efficiency is way up, and he's still not where he wants to be as a three-point shooter. So there is a leveling off of Tatum's game that can be expected. But the thing is, that leveling off might make him even more dangerous because he's still, that aggressiveness is just the style of play thing. And if that continues, then he'll still get to the free throw line. He'll still finish and get a pretty high percentage at the rim. It's a turning point in his career. He's playing it's almost like he's growing into his body and he's growing into his role and he's growing into an MVP.
It almost said like it almost felt like you were getting ready to say he's playing the best basketball of his career. Is that safe to say at this point?
Of course, easily.
Okay.
I mean, there are a few games you look at all his point totals and the 26 and 23 point totals are at the low end. His lowest point total this season so far, I think, is 23 points. He's got multiple 30-point games, multiple 40-point games. So, yeah, it's Giannis, it's Luka, it's Jayson Tatum in the conversation for MVP so far.
Yeah, he's got more 30-point games than he does games with less than 30 points, which is absurd to think about 13 games into the season. Last year, John, you talked about, when we talked about Jayson Tatum and kind of the step that he took last season, the big part of that was the playmaking, right? Trusting his teammates more, getting more guys involved. You talked, at length just now about his aggressiveness. Is that kind of what you're seeing out of him these first 13 games in, is just that level of aggressiveness, or is there something else that he's kind of tapped further into this season?
There are a couple of things that stand out. One, it's the attitude. It's the aggressiveness. It's the attitude behind the aggressiveness. It's the, I'm at point A, there's point B, and you know what? I'm going to get there no matter what you do. That wasn't always the case. And when I talk about stylistic stuff, Tatum used to kind of take diagonal routes to the rim and try to avoid contact and slip a layup up past outstretched hands. And when you do that, you're already falling in a certain direction. So when you get hit, you're already going in that direction anyway. It's hard for a ref to see that. When you attack the front of the rim, when you get hit and you go past the front of the rim, no one's expecting you to say purposely go past the front of the rim. So then the refs say, oh, okay, well, he was fouled. It's just that more dogged determination and the direct path that he's taking is leading to more fouls because the fouls are more obvious, and it just creates the contact, and he's just playing through that contact. And the other thing is his defense, which has always been, decent to good. And this year it's getting like good to really good. And he had one game where he had 4 block shots. He had a big block shot in a game to force overtime, even though the Celtics lost in overtime. He's been getting the chase down blocks. He's been playing really well defensively. He's been rebounding. So the defense and the aggression, the playmaking is still there. The way he gets guys open just by his presence on the floor is still there. So yeah, it's a completely new level. This is not a level at which Jayson Tatum has ever played. Even when he had hot stretches, this type of play, this is not the way Jayson Tatum has ever played in his career.
Right now, John, and it might still be a little too early to be able to give a definitive answer on this, but how would you best describe Joe Mazulla, his coaching style, maybe to this point, and maybe just, if it's too early for that, just kind of how the guys are responding to him, at the helm?
Yeah, I think he's been really good as a coach as far as, well, first of all, offensively, I think he's brilliant. I think he's as good an offensive coach as you're going to find. The way he's using these guys is really smart. The way he's using screeners, shooters as screeners, some creative plays, some really intricate knowledge of the rules to work to his advantage. Really smart stuff. He's as good an offensive coach as Ime Udoka was a defensive coach. So now they're waiting to get Robert Williams back, and hopefully that fixes a lot of their defensive stuff. And if they can do that, then watch out. But he's Mazulla as far as scheming on offense. I've developed a really strong respect for him. And he seems to be connecting with the guys. The guys have already, he was an assistant here for a few years, so they've already developed a pretty strong relationship with him. And I think they have only that has only grown because as much as he is in a front-facing sense, kind of benign and doesn't say much, I think behind the scenes he'll be direct. And everybody's talked about his preparedness and how direct and honest he is. And he's using those relationships that he's built to be honest with the guys. So far, so good. I think there are some things to smooth out. There's some questions about his timeout use and how much he lets guys play through certain runs where maybe we can have a conversation there. And certainly some of the defensive stuff is a question of, is it him or is it the fact that they've been shorthanded and not had Robert Williams? But everything else has been a very pleasant surprise.
Yeah, Celtics right now, number 1 offense in the NBA by a kind of a wide margin at the top, like a few points difference between number 1 and then number 2 on the list, but just 21st in defensive rating. So maybe that is something that, Robert Williams is going to be able to smooth out when he does come back, which that leads me to my very final question for you, John. What's the latest update on Robert Williams? Where is he at as far as his rehab progress, and when can we expect him back on the floor?
This is really interesting. I think it's going to be sooner than maybe we expected because he kind of let it slip that they set that 8 to 12 week window just in case he had a setback, and he hasn't had any setbacks yet. Well, now we're at week 7. This past Friday was week 7. So week 8 is coming up at the end of this week. And so I think we're now getting into the window of possible Robert Williams returns. So is Williams going to come back immediately once that window opens? He says he's been dunking in practice. Or in his individual workouts. So it seems like the knee is fine. He's on the bench, and some of his celebrations have been pretty vigorous on the bench. So he's not really concerned about putting any pressure on that knee when he hops off and starts celebrating with his teammates. So he looks normal right now. I think they'll take a little bit of time since they're 10-3. Let's see if they can keep this rolling. There's no real pressure to bring him back. Let's see if this can keep going. They play OKC. They've got some tough games coming up, a road trip coming up, but if they can get through this okay and just let Rob slowly get back to things and not feel that they need to force him back, I think we'll see him come back in due time. But my guess, a couple weeks away, maybe.
All right, couple weeks away for Robert Williams. Can he help right the Celtics defense when he's ultimately back in the lineup? Can Jayson Tatum maintain his MVP level play? Of course, you're going to have us covered for all of that and more over at Locked On Celtics. John, I appreciate you stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
Always a pleasure, my friend.